Well, hello everybody. Welcome to He Set Me Free. My name is Robert, and I hope everybody is having a blessed day. You know, I love how the Lord works in my life. This is my third time trying to do this video because every time I get started, I get another ride on Lyft. Today I'm driving on Lyft, and things are starting to make a lot more sense on how Uber regulates my rides and the amount of money that I make. Through the power of the Holy Spirit this morning, my eyes were opened to how Uber works. In other words, I was enlightened. See, Uber's only going to allow me to make so much money during the course of a week. It would appear my cap is just under $600. Now, I went back and I looked all the way to the first part of the year, and on average, I only made 300 something. Now, that's just on Uber. That's not counting Lyft. All right. Lyft has put me over that threshold, but not Uber. Last week, I did not do any driving for Lyft. I only drove for Uber, and I made $512. So on Uber this week, I made $562. If I would have stayed on Uber, my max would have probably just been under $40. Now, there's a couple different things that I started to notice this week. And as I was meditating upon it, as I was driving back to park, I always knew that on the weekends, money falls off. I make a majority of my money during the course of the week. Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, money starts to fall off. And the reason for that is because I start to approach my cap or my threshold of what Uber's willing to allow me to make per week. There used to be a day where I would average $800 to $900 a week on Uber. Not anymore. Those days have come and gone. So now that I know what Uber does to me as a driver, I can start splitting my time more between Uber, Lyft, and even doing DoorDash to compensate that which Uber does to me. See, now it all makes sense why I start getting rides in less desirable areas of Waco. North Waco, Belmead, Lacey Lakeview area, and East Waco. It all makes sense now. That they will give me one day where I will make really good, and then they start curbing or cutting off the flow, if you will, of the rides. I now understand what they do. And Lyft is no better. Get me wrong. Lyft is shady as heck. But now that I see what Uber is doing, I can better combat that and start splitting my time up doing Lyft and DoorDash. I can do DoorDash from 11 to 1 during the rush hour time and pick up maybe 40 or 50 extra dollars. So it all makes sense now. Because they don't want you to make a whole lot of money. That would stand to reason why on Tuesday I had 14 rides, and it took 14 rides for me to break $100. I made like 116, I think. But then the following day, or something like that. Anyway, I had 2 days worth where I made over $100. But then as the week progressed on, I started to make less and less and less. And one might say, well, it could just because there might be more drivers out on the roads or less passenger requests. No, I don't buy that. Because in the city the size of Waco, why would you have that kind of fluctuation with the exception of Sunday mornings? So what they do is they start diminishing the amount of rides that you get and payout. They start taking more money on the weekends. Like I had a ride this morning, a regular of mine. Her ride is always $8, and I want to say 42 cents, somewhere in that ballpark. Well, this morning it was $7.70. I picked her up at her workplace and I carried her home. I've always believed that anytime you pick up somebody north of Waco Drive, that they charge less money, and today proved it. Because anything south of Waco Drive, they charge more money. So the poorer the areas, the less money Uber charges, and the more affluent areas of Waco, the more money that they charge. And I've always maintained this. You get into the north parts of Waco, say from 36th Street, Waco Drive, north to Lake Shore, over to Lacey Lakeview, Belmead, across the river, you could literally cut it with a knife. That's the areas that they try to get you in because it takes longer to pick up, it takes longer to drop off. They charge less money, but they give less to the driver, but may charge more. But now, instead of being able to get faster rides and earn more money being in more affluent areas, it's now taking you, say, you go from 3 rides an hour down to 2, maybe 1 ride an hour, and you've just cut your income. This is their model. This is Uber's model. Now, Lyft, what they try to do is they simply just try to get you to drive more miles because they take half. They want you to use up that gas and stay out on the roads longer. It all makes sense with Lyft. Lyft is shady. But now with Uber, I always thought that they were a little more subtle about it. But once you start piecing what Uber does, then it all makes sense. That's shady in and of itself. So I got off Uber this morning once the Lord opened my eyes and allowed me to see the tactics of the enemy. But not only that, it's all distractions. Now we're going to get into my faith. Because these are tools that Satan uses to keep you stressed out, to keep you in worry, to keep you in fear, paranoia, so on and so forth. And if he can distract you from that and keep you from realizing what the platforms are actually doing, then he wins. But by me going back through and looking at my weekly earnings for Uber, and the Lord, even though I have not made that much money on the platforms, the Lord is still provided in some way, form, or fashion. I've always been able to actually physically pay my bills. And now it all makes sense. But he opened my eyes and allowed me to see that which I made a prophetic statement yesterday. I felt like I was being held back. And then lo and behold, I wake up, I start looking at my earnings, and then it all made sense. It was kind of like how I came about to quit drinking. This weekend or next weekend, I celebrate 90 days of sobriety. I saw how much the Lord showed me how much money I was wasting a day on alcohol. But not only that, going to the grocery store, and I started to fall back into the grocery store pit a little bit more, spending money when I didn't need to go to the grocery store. But the devil's playing in my ear, this would sound really good for dinner. And then it would amaze me how I would take and spend exactly what I made out on the roads. I'd hear this little voice, you need this, you need this, you need this. So he knows how much I've made on the roads that day, and I still need to put gas in my car. And then I go to the grocery store, and I would literally spend almost to the dime what I earned. I kid you not. It was, and I'd be so aggravated, and then I'd get stressed out. Then my stomach would start bothering me. Then my blood pressure would shoot up. You have no idea. So if you find yourself, if you do ride share and you feel that you're being oppressed, start looking at your numbers. Start looking at the trends, where Uber's trying to keep you. There was a couple times this past week where I could not get out of North Waco to save my life. And I was burning just as much gas. and making no money. And I was getting aggravated and I was getting stressed. They kept me out in Belmead, Lacey Lakeview area one day. Then they switched to North Waco. Then they switched to Northwest Waco, which is probably one of the most worst areas of Waco because you can't make everything centralized in that area. So it's all short trips. Whenever you start seeing short trips, Uber's trying to increase your ride output while keeping your earnings output down. And they're still making money because on those short rides, they take half. Regardless, they take half. The longer your drive is to go pick somebody up, and the shorter the trip, they're trying to get you to use more gas. They're trying to slow down your ride amounts, and they're trying to curb or cut off your income and take half. That's also too how that they make their money. You have to remember that they make their money on the drive to the ride and not in the ride. So if they can get you to travel farther without having to pay you long distance pickup fees, that's exactly what they'll do, because at that point they're charging the passenger more money for pickup than they are paying you out because your ride is cheaper. And another scam that they do is they do premium pickup likely, 20 cents. That's a waste of my time. Or that they will start doing surging to keep you on the app while they are giving you short rides. Yes. If you get, say, by any chance, I had one where it was $6 for a surge. But they took it to just under the threshold where they would not have to pay me long distance pickup fee, and it was a short trip. So I actually only made, I think it was just under $9 for that ride, or no. Yeah, under $9 for that ride. It might have been 12. I think it was $12 and some change. A normal ride, it would have just been $6 something, but I had to drive all the way over to pick that person up. And then what it does is that aligned me, it put me in North Waco so that they could give me another ride in North Waco. See, this is another tactic that they do, is they'll give you a really good ride, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a less desirable area because they triangulate your area of where you're going to drive. Your first 3 rides will tell you exactly where you're going to drive, how many miles you're going to drive to pick up, how many miles in trip, and how much you're going to make. I kid you not. Do the math. Watch your next day. There are Uber drivers. Watch your next day and see if I'm not wrong. The only way to break it is you can't. You could log off for 3 hours and they're still going to take and shove you back in those areas where you started off this morning. So be mindful, drivers. Be very, very mindful of what Uber does. And I hope I've enlightened some people. I hope that you'll get a better understanding of what Uber does. Lyft just wants you to drive many miles for as low ball as that they possibly can. I turned down a ride that was $4.14, and it was 5 miles, which is better than what Uber would have paid. Uber would have only paid me $3.40. And I probably should have took that ride, but that would have put me over in North Waco, and I don't want to be in North Waco. I want to stay along the I-35 corridor, because you get over there and it's harder to take shortcuts. The nice thing about Lyft is you can take shortcuts to the rider and during the trip and still get paid the same amount. Where Uber forces you to take their routes, and this is by design. So, hope everybody has a blessed day. It is Sunday, and we will talk to y'all later. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe. And if you're a driver for Uber and you happen to notice these trends, leave a